They mocked her for marrying a poor man until he revealed he was the Vampire King. The morning mist lay thick over the cobblestone streets of Eldrith, curling around the spires of the palace and the wooden stalls of the marketplace alike. Alara's breath rose in small clouds as she walked through the crowded square, her simple gown brushing the stones. Today was meant to be the happiest day of her life. She was to marry Cale, the man she loved, yet the air around her seemed to hum with whispers and hidden smiles. The townspeople had always been skeptical of her choice. Cale, though kind and gentle, appeared ordinary to the eyes of the world. He carried no title, no wealth, no visible claim to influence. He was, in their words, a poor man. Alara felt the sting of their judgment even now, a dull ache beneath the surface of her joy. She tried to focus on Cale, on the warmth of his hand in hers, on the quiet courage in his dark eyes. But the murmurs followed her like shadows.
She thinks she's marrying into wealth. How foolish.
A woman sneered from the marketplace.
A poor man. What can he give her except empty rooms and a hungry hearth? Another whispered.
Alara's lips pressed into a thin line. She knew their words were cruel, but she also knew their cruelty held no truth. Cale was everything she had ever dreamed of. Honest, loyal, and steadfast. And yet her heart could not deny the small tremor of doubt that sometimes shook her resolve. When she reached the palace gates, Cale was waiting. His dark cloak fluttered in the morning wind, and the sunlight glinted off something sharp and unexpected in his eyes. To any observer, he seemed a simple man. Yet there was a quiet strength in the way he stood, an invisible authority that made the whispers of the crowd feel like distant echoes. "Alara," he said softly, his voice a calm river against the storm of gossip.
"Are you ready?"
She nodded, pressing her hand into his.
"I am."
Inside, the grand hall was alive with tension. Nobles and courtiers stood in stiff lines, their eyes fixed on the bride, as though she were a puzzle too curious to solve. Alara felt their gazes pierce her skin, each one a silent judgment she could not escape. Cale's hand remained steady in hers, a lifeline in the sea of scorn. The ceremony began, the soft music of the chamber echoing against the vaulted ceilings. Alara's steps toward the altar were slow, deliberate. She caught sight of faces she had known all her life, now twisted with skepticism or amusement. Their whispers rose like a low hum, a warning and a challenge, all at once. Cale's eyes met hers across the room. In them, she saw something she had not expected. A flicker of sadness, yes, but also pride, determination, and a promise she could not yet understand. As the officiant spoke, Alara's mind wandered. She remembered the first time she had met Cale in the village square, how he had rescued a stray dog that no one else wanted to touch. She remembered his gentle words, his patient smile, the way he made her feel seen when the rest of the world ignored her. And now, all that love and courage would be tested. After the ceremony, the courtiers pressed forward, offering congratulations that felt more like accusations.
"Are you certain this is the right choice, Lady Alara?"
An older noblewoman asked, her voice silk over steel. "You could have done better," said a young lord, his smile sharp as a dagger. Alara swallowed hard, refusing to meet their eyes. Cale's grip on her hand tightened, a silent warning not to falter. As they left the hall, the palace doors closing behind them, the whispers followed, but the moment felt strangely heavy. Shadows seemed to twist unnaturally along the walls, and a chill brushed her skin as if some unseen presence had taken notice of the union. Cale guided her to a quiet corridor, away from the sneers and the gossip. "Do not let them shake you," he said, his voice steady.
"The world often misunderstands what it cannot see. You chose me, and that is enough." "I know," Alara replied, though the tension in her chest remained.
"But their eyes, they feel like knives." Cale nodded, his expression unreadable. "Then let them feel your strength. Let them see what they cannot understand. And trust that I will protect you. Always." Even as he spoke, A faint vibration rippled through the stone beneath their feet, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. Ilara's heart quickened. She glanced around, but the corridor was empty. Kale noticed her unease. "Do you feel it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kyle's eyes darkened, a shadow passing over his features.
"Yes," he said simply. "There are forces in this world that do not bow to man or king."
"Be ready, Ilara. Today is only the beginning." The day continued with a reception in the palace gardens. Sunlight filtered through the towering trees, painting the flowers in golden light, but the court's disapproval remained like a lingering fog. Ilara tried to laugh, tried to meet the eyes of those who would mock her with kindness, but the undercurrent of unease never left her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the first sign of something unnatural appeared. A servant disappeared without a trace, leaving a small silver goblet tipped over on the stone floor. Other strange things followed. Shadows that moved against the wind, a faint whispering carried on the air, and the feeling of eyes watching from the dark corners of the palace. Ilara felt fear prickling at her spine, but Kaal remained calm.
"It will not touch you," he said. "Not if we stay together." Yet as they returned to the main hall for the evening feast, the sense of foreboding grew stronger.
The chandeliers flickered as though a breeze passed through the stones themselves. The courtiers gasped, and a shiver passed through the room. Ilara looked to Kale, expecting some sign of reassurance. Instead, he stood, his posture commanding attention in a way no mortal man could. The room went silent, every eye fixed upon him. And then the impossible happened. His eyes, so dark and human all day, glimmered crimson in the candlelight. The rich glow made the whispers in the hall die instantly.
"I am not what you believe,"
he said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying an authority that made the walls tremble.
"I am Kale. I am more than your scorn can comprehend."
The doors of the hall slammed shut behind them, with a deafening crash, the echo ringing like a bell in the stunned silence. Courtiers stumbled back, some in fear, some in awe. Ilara clutched Kale's hand, her pulse racing. The man she had married was no ordinary man. He was something ancient, something powerful, and the world around them seemed to bow to his presence. A servant's candle flickered and went out, plunging the hall into shadows that moved of their own accord. Ilara felt the cold brush of invisible wings against her skin. The whispers that had once seemed distant were now inside her mind, asking questions she could not answer. Kale's voice cut through the tension, calm and unwavering.
"Do not be afraid. I will not let harm touch you."
"But you must see the truth. Our life together will be nothing like you have known. You are part of something greater now, and that something is dangerous." Ilara's heart pounded in her chest. Fear, wonder, and love collided within her. She had chosen this man. She had trusted him, and yet the world she had known seemed to crumble around her. Why now?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Kale's gaze softened. "Because the world must learn the truth," he said. "And because there are forces that will not wait. They are coming, and we must face them, together." The hall grew colder, the shadows stretching longer as if they themselves listened and watched.
Ilara pressed closer to Kale, feeling the warmth of his body against the chill that filled the room. "I trust you," she said, though even as the words left her lips, doubt lingered.
She did not fully understand what he was, but she understood this. She loved him. And love, she realized, was a kind of courage. Kale smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then we are ready," he said. Suddenly, the walls trembled, a low rumble echoing through the stone. The chandeliers swayed, and the shadows deepened, crawling toward them like living things. The court screamed, and Ilara clutched Kale tighter. "Hold." The night is not finished with us yet. And in that moment, as the doors of the palace groaned and shivered under some unseen force, Ilara realized that her life had changed forever.
The man she had married was no longer the simple village stranger she had loved.
He was something eternal, something feared, and something magnificent. The first part of her story, the story of a scorned bride who had dared to choose love over wealth, had come to an end, and a darker, more dangerous chapter was beginning. The air crackled with tension. Outside, the shadows of the palace stretched and twisted, and somewhere deep within the walls, a voice whispered her name.
Elara.
The heavy doors of the palace hall groaned as Cale pushed them open. A faint, unnatural light spilled from behind, revealing a corridor that none of the courtiers had seen before. Elara hesitated, gripping Cale's hand, her mind swirling with questions she could not yet voice.
"Where are we going?" she whispered.
Some truths cannot be told in daylight, Cale said, his voice calm but threaded with a gravity that made her pulse quicken. Follow me, and you will see why the world cannot understand what I am. The air grew cool and damp, carrying a faint scent of iron and earth. Shadows stretched along the walls like living fingers, yet Cale's presence made the darkness feel less threatening, almost protective. As they descended, Elara felt her heart beat faster. Every step seemed to pull her farther from the world she knew, and closer to one that existed in whispers and old stories. Legend spoke of hidden courts beneath palaces, of immortal rulers who moved unseen among men. And now she realized that those stories were not lies, they were warnings. The corridor ended in a massive archway carved with ancient runes that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Beyond it lay a vast chamber, vaulted and echoing, illuminated by an ethereal silver glow. The floor was polished black stone, reflecting the figures standing within. Vampires, dozens of them, some pale as marble, some with eyes that glimmered like molten gold, turned to observe the newcomers. Their gazes were sharp, testing, curious. Elara felt both fear and fascination. She had always thought of vampires as creatures of legend, but here they were, real and magnificent. Cale stepped forward, his hand still holding hers, and the room seemed to recognize him. The murmurs of the vampires were soft, reverent. "My queen," Cale said quietly, introducing her. "This is Elara."
She walks beside me now. A ripple of acknowledgement passed through the crowd. Elara felt the weight of their attention, each gaze like a blade assessing her worth.
She swallowed hard, remembering the whispers in the palace above. Here, judgment was even sharper, even more precise. Yet, she also felt a strange pull of belonging, a sense that she had crossed a threshold and that life as she had known it was no longer enough. One vampire, taller than the rest, stepped forward. His hair was silver, his eyes dark as night. "The humans watch and mock," he said, his voice smooth and commanding.
Yet the king's choice is clear. She is yours to guide, Cale, and ours to observe.
Observation did not feel safe, and yet there was no malice in the words, only curiosity. She turned to Cale, who simply nodded, as if reassuring her without needing to speak. "You will learn," Cale whispered, "that power is not always shown in wealth or bloodline. Sometimes it is hidden, waiting for the right moment to awaken." The chamber was lined with portraits, each depicting a ruler whose eyes seemed alive, watching as though the paint itself were breathing. Elara's gaze lingered on one in particular, a woman whose features were strikingly similar to hers, though the painting was centuries old. The vampire beside her noticed her stare. "Do you see her?" he asked.
Elara nodded.
Wow.
She... That is no coincidence, the vampire said softly. Blood carries memory, and destiny often repeats itself in those it chooses. You have been brought here not merely by love, but by fate. Elara felt her stomach tighten. The words felt like a riddle, and yet she sensed their truth in the rhythm of her own heartbeat. She glanced at Kale, who was silent, watching her, waiting for her to absorb the enormity of the revelation. "Why me?" she asked. Her voice trembled, carrying both wonder and fear. "Why now?" "Because your courage and compassion can guide me through the shadows I cannot face alone," he said. "Because the court above and the enemies below cannot break the bond we share. And because, Elara, you are the key to breaking an ancient curse that has bound my family for centuries."
A shiver ran down her spine.
The words were heavy with meaning, impossible to ignore. Kale had revealed not only his true nature, but also the magnitude of the role she now carried. She had married a simple man, and yet she now stood in the heart of a world that stretched far beyond the village she had known. The vampires began to circulate, their presence both intimidating and mesmerizing. Some offered nods of respect, others lingered in silence, studying her as though testing the boundaries of her courage. Elara felt exposed, fragile, yet unyielding. She could not show fear, not here, not now. She drew a steadying breath and held her head high. "Your world is different," Kale said, sensing her inner conflict. "It is not cruel, but it is unprepared for truths it refuses to see.
Here, you will learn to see with eyes unclouded by prejudice and fear."
Every word he spoke seemed to deepen her awareness of the responsibility she now bore. She realized that the whispers of the court above were nothing compared to the silent judgments of this hidden kingdom. Yet she also felt a spark, a thrill, at the thought of rising to meet it. They moved deeper into the chamber, arriving at a platform of black stone that seemed to hum with energy. Kale stepped forward and gestured toward a throne carved from obsidian, its edges sharp but elegant, glowing faintly with an inner light. "This is where I rule," Kale said.
"And this is where you will learn the truth of what it means to stand beside me."
Elara approached, her fingers brushing the cold stone. A strange warmth pulsed through her hand, as though the throne recognized her presence. Kale's gaze softened as he watched her, a mixture of pride, longing, and caution. "You must understand," he said. "That power comes with sacrifice. You will face trials that challenge your mind, your heart, and your loyalty. There will be shadows that seek to claim you, whispers that try to turn you against me, and forces that will test the very essence of who you are." Elara felt the weight of his words settle into her chest. She had known that marrying him would change her life, but the truth was more vast and terrifying than she could have imagined. Yet she also knew that retreating was not an option. She loved him, and love demanded courage. As night fell, the chamber changed. The soft silver glow deepened, shadows stretching into intricate patterns across the floor and walls. Figures moved silently along the edges, some whispering in a language she did not understand, others observing in perfect stillness. Kale turned to her.
"The court above sees only the surface," he said. "Here, beneath the palace, truth reigns."
"And the truth is, I am bound by more than love. I am bound by blood, by duty, and by a curse older than the oldest stone in this kingdom."
Elara's hand tightened around his. "Tell me," she said.
"I want to understand. I want to stand with you, not behind you. Then you must see it for yourself." He led her to a deep pool of black water, smooth as glass, at the center of the chamber. The surface rippled as they approached, and images began to form. Centuries of rulers, battles, betrayals, and sacrifices. Elara watched, mesmerized, as the history of Kale's line unfolded before her eyes. "This curse," he said, "has haunted my family for generations. Each king and queen has faced it, and many have failed. It seeks to consume all that we love, to destroy what is most precious. But there is hope. A bond of true heart can break its hold. That is why you are here, Elara. Your courage, your heart, your choice. It is the key.
Elara's breath caught.
She had always known that love was powerful, but never had she imagined it could wield such influence. She looked at Kale, seeing not only the man she had married, but the king, the immortal, the figure burdened with centuries of pain and expectation. "I will stand with you," she said, her voice steady, though her heart pounded. "I will not turn away no matter what comes." Kale's eyes softened, and for a brief moment the weight of eternity seemed to lift from his shoulders. "Then we are ready," he whispered. Suddenly, the shadows along the edges of the chamber shifted, coalescing into a figure cloaked in black. Its voice was a whisper and a roar at once, echoing through the vaulted ceiling. "You have revealed too much," it said. "The bond has begun, and with it the reckoning comes." The pool of black water trembled, and the images within twisted into darker shapes. Kale's hand gripped hers tightly. "We must move," he said, his voice low but firm. "The night is watching, and some forces will not wait." As they turned to leave the chamber, the cloaked figure's laughter echoed behind them, chilling and hollow. Elara's heart pounded not with fear, but with determination. She had entered a world of shadows, of ancient curses, and of immortal power, and she had chosen to face it, beside the man she loved. But even as they ascended the stairs back toward the palace, a single thought lingered in her mind. The night was alive, the shadows were patient, and the hidden throne they had entered held secrets that even Kale did not yet fully understand. And somewhere, in the darkness beneath the palace, the cloak shifted, and eyes glimmered with a hunger that would not rest until it had tested the bond between the scorned bride and the vampire king. The moon hung low over Eldrith, spilling silver light across the forest that bordered the palace grounds. Elara walked beside Kale, her hand in his, though the night felt heavier than any she had known. The whispers from the hidden court below still lingered in her mind, and the shadow of the cloaked figure haunted her thoughts. "This forest, it feels alive," she said softly, her eyes tracing the silvered leaves that swayed in the breeze. "Like it knows us," Kiel nodded, his gaze alert. "It does," he said. "Some places remember the footsteps of kings and queens long after the people who walked them are gone. The land, the trees, the stones, they carry echoes of the past, and some of those echoes are dangerous." Elara felt a shiver run down her spine. Danger had become a constant companion, yet she refused to let it weaken her. She had promised Kale she would stand beside him, and she meant to keep that promise. They arrived at a clearing where the moonlight pooled like liquid silver. At the center was a circle of ancient stones, carved with symbols that glowed faintly in the night. Kale stopped, releasing her hand just long enough to gesture to the stones. "This is where you begin," he said. "The court above may doubt you. The court below may test you. But it is here, in the shadows, that you will discover the strength within yourself." Elara approached the stones cautiously. As her fingers brushed the cold, etched surfaces, a warmth spread through her hand and up her arm. The glow intensified, and the symbols seemed to respond to her presence. She looked at Kale, astonished. "You can feel it, can't you?" he asked. "This power, it is tied to you, as much as it is to me. The bond between our hearts awakens what lies dormant." Elara's heart pounded. She had always believed herself ordinary, a simple woman from a humble village. Yet here she was, standing in a circle of magic, older than the kingdom itself, sensing something deep within her, stirring to life. Before she could speak, a whisper passed through the clearing, soft as silk and sharp as steel. "The mark chooses not only the king, but the queen." Ella looked down at her wrist. The faint mark Kale had spoken of in the hidden court shimmered under the moonlight. It pulsed slowly, a heartbeat of its own. She drew a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale stepped close, his presence a shield against the strange, lingering energy.
"It is a sign of destiny," he said.
"A mark that binds you to the curse and to the hope that can end it. But it also draws attention from those who would use it against us." The forest grew still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Elara felt the weight of the unseen eyes upon them, the promise of danger threading through the night. Suddenly, movement flickered in the shadows beyond the stone circle. A figure stepped forward, cloaked and silent. The hood fell back, revealing a face pale as moonlight, eyes glinting like sharp crystal. "Elara," the figure said, its voice melodic and cold. "You do not yet understand what you have entered." Kale's hand tightened over hers. "This is one of the court's guardians," he said. "They test those who step into the shadows." "Do not falter. Your courage is your shield." Alara's knees threatened to give way, but she straightened. "I will not falter," she said. Her voice echoed through the clearing, stronger than she expected. The guardian moved in a circle around her, observing, judging. Each step seemed to draw more light from the moon, shadows twisting like living threads at the edges of the clearing. "Strength alone is not enough," the guardian said. "The heart must be true, and the mind unwavering. Only then can you face what lies ahead." Elara closed her eyes, focusing on Kale. She could feel his pulse in her own. Steady and sure. She could feel the warmth of his hand, the certainty in his presence. Slowly, the fear that had gripped her loosened. Courage, she realized, was not the absence of fear, but the choice to face it. When she opened her eyes, the mark on her wrist glowed brighter. The guardian's expression softened, and a faint nod acknowledged her resolve. "Then you are ready," it said, vanishing into the shadows as silently as it had appeared. Kale exhaled, relief passing through him like a current. "You have done well," he said, his hand returning to hers. "This is only the beginning, but you have shown the first proof of your strength." But before she could speak, a scream pierced the night. It was sharp and human, filled with terror. The wind carried it through the forest, and Alara's pulse quickened. "Stay behind me," Kale said, stepping forward, his aura shifting as shadows seemed to bend around him. His eyes glimmered crimson in the moonlight, and the power within him pulsed visibly. A warning and a promise. They ran toward the sound, the trees blurring around them. In a small clearing, they found a young servant boy from the palace, trapped under a fallen tree. His eyes were wide with fear. "Elara, help me!" he cried. Elara moved quickly, lifting the heavy trunk with Kale's guidance. The mark on her wrist pulsed, and she felt a surge of strength unlike anything she had known. With a final push, the tree shifted, freeing the boy. Kale nodded, a rare smile brushing his lips.
Your heart, it is not only strong, but it can channel power. That is rare among mortals.
Elara's chest heaved, her body trembling with the effort and the rush of newfound energy. She looked at Kale, awe and fear mingling in her gaze. I didn't know I could do that. Few could, Kale said softly. But you are not just anyone.
You are my queen, and the bond we share awakens what is hidden. They returned to the palace, the first light of dawn brushing the horizon. Elara felt exhausted, exhilarated, and afraid. All at once, the castle above seemed smaller now, mundane compared to the depths and power she had glimpsed. Days passed, and training began in earnest. Elara learned to sense the whispers of the shadows, to move with the rhythms of the ancient magic, and to trust in the bond that tied her to Kale. Each lesson was a challenge, each step a test of heart and mind. Yet, for all her growth, she could not ignore the loneliness that tugged at her in quiet moments. Kale was patient and kind, but centuries of solitude had left him wary, and sometimes she glimpsed a shadow of sorrow in his eyes. One night, As they walked together along the palace walls, the moonlight painting silver patterns on the stones, Elara dared to speak. "Keo," she said softly, "do you ever regret your choices, that you revealed yourself to me?" Kale stopped, gazing at her with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. "No," he said, after a long silence. "But I fear the world above will never forgive what it does not understand.
And I fear I could lose you to the dangers we face." Elara stepped closer, placing a hand over his.
"I am not afraid," she said. "Not of you, not of them, not of the shadows."
I choose to stand with you, Kale. Even if the world refuses to see.
A faint smile curved his lips. "Then your heart is stronger than you know," he said. "And that heart may yet save me from the curse that has haunted my bloodline for centuries." The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint echo of laughter, soft, mocking, and filled with malice. "What is that?" she asked. Hale's expression darkened. "It is a reminder," he said quietly. "The curse, and those who guard it.
Are patient. They wait for any sign of weakness.
And every time we step forward, the shadows test us."
Elara felt the chill of that warning, but she also felt something deeper, a bond that no curse, no shadow, no force could break. She looked up at Kale, determination burning in her chest.
"Then we will face them together,"
she said.
Kael nodded, drawing her close.
Together, he agreed. The night deepened, and with it the whispers of the forest grew louder. Shadows twisted and shimmered at the edges of their vision, hinting at forces unseen, plotting, watching. The bond between them pulsed, a fragile thread against the vast, unseen dangers that stretched across the kingdom. Then, a sudden movement in the darkness caught Elara's eye. A figure, cloaked and silent, darted between the trees. Her mark flared, glowing brighter than ever before. Kale's eyes narrowed, and his hand gripped hers tighter. "Elara," he whispered, "they are coming, and soon you will understand the true cost of standing beside a king of shadows."
Elara's pulse raced, her fear mingling with resolve. Whatever lay ahead, she would not falter.
She had chosen this path, and she would walk it with him, through darkness, danger, and the whispers of an ancient curse. The forest seemed to hold its breath, and in that stillness, Elara understood one undeniable truth. The night was alive. The shadows were patient, and the bond she shared with Kale was the only light in the encroaching darkness. And somewhere, just beyond the trees, the cloaked figure watched, waiting for the moment to strike. The first light of dawn brushed the palace walls with a pale glow, but the shadows beneath Eldrith were still alive. Elara stood beside Kale at the edge of the courtyard, her hand gripping his. The mark on her wrist pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of its own, signaling the awakening of power she had only begun to understand.
"The time has come,"
Kale said softly. His eyes, crimson in the dim morning light, reflected centuries of sorrow and hope. "The curse is stirring, and our enemies sense it. They will strike soon, but together we can face them." Elara nodded, drawing strength from the certainty in his voice.
"I am ready,"
she said. Though fear lingered at the edges of her mind, it was tempered by determination. She had trained, she had learned, and she had discovered the courage within herself. The same courage that had drawn Kale to her long ago. The courtyard shimmered as a ripple of energy passed over it. Shadows twisted unnaturally, forming shapes that were almost human, almost animal, and yet entirely otherworldly. Kale's hand tightened over hers.
"They are coming," he murmured. "The remnants of the old curse."
"They will test us, try to break us apart." Elara's heart beat faster. She had feared this moment, and yet she knew it could not be avoided. "Then we will stand," she said firmly. "Side by side as one." The first wave of shadows surged from the edges of the courtyard. They were swift and relentless, wailing like the wind and shifting like smoke. Elara could feel their malice, their hunger for fear. But Kale's presence steadied her. His aura shimmered around them like a shield, and she felt the bond between them grow stronger with every pulse. "Focus on the bond," Kale whispered. "Let it guide you. Your strength is not just in yourself, but in the heart that beats with mine." Elara closed her eyes, feeling the rhythm of their joined hearts. A warmth spread through her chest, traveling down her arm to the mark on her wrist. Light flared briefly from the mark, and a pulse of energy shot into the shadows. They shrieked and recoiled, their forms twisting in confusion.
"This power," Elara breathed, astonished.
"It's responding to us." Kaal nodded. "It always has, but you doubted it. Trust in it now. And in me." Together they stepped forward, moving as one. The shadows surged again, and Elara raised her hand, letting the power within her flow. Silver light lanced from the mark on her wrist, weaving through the shadows like threads of moonlight. The darkness hissed and wriggled, unable to withstand the purity of their bond. Suddenly, one shadow separated itself from the others, larger, darker, and more malevolent. It surged toward Elara with a speed that made her heart skip. Kale stepped in front of her, his wings unfurling, casting a protective shadow over her. "Now," he said, his voice low and commanding, "show it what our hearts can do." Elara focused, letting the warmth of their joined hearts ignite the mark. A brilliant light erupted from her palm, spreading through the courtyard, striking the shadow. It shrieked, writhing, and then dissolved into mist that scattered like smoke in the wind. The remaining shadows paused, faltering at the display of combined strength. Hale's hand found hers again, and together they advanced. Step by step, pulse by pulse, the shadows dissolved into nothingness, unable to withstand the unity of heart and courage. When the last of the darkness vanished, silence fell over the courtyard. Elara's chest heaved, her body trembling from the effort. Kale drew her close, his crimson eyes softening, and for the first time in centuries there was no weight of sorrow in his gaze, only relief, awe, and love. "You did it," he whispered. "You truly did it." Elara pressed her forehead to his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart against her own. "We did it," she said. Together, even as the morning light brightened, a new presence made itself known, the cloaked figure that had haunted them since the hidden court. It stepped forward slowly, revealing a face pale and regal, eyes gleaming with an intensity that made the air shiver. "You have done well, mortal," the figure said. "But the curse was never meant to be defeated by a single heart alone. You have awakened powers you barely understand. The true test lies ahead."
Kale's hand tightened over hers, and Elara felt the familiar surge of determination.
"We are ready," he said firmly. "Whatever you bring, we face it together."
The figure paused, then inclined its head.
"Very well," it said. "You have proven yourselves.
But know this. The world above and the world below are changing. The bond between mortal and immortal is fragile. Protect it, or all may be lost." And then, as silently as it had appeared, the figure vanished, leaving only the fading shimmer of its cloak. Elara looked at Kale, her eyes bright with resolve. "We can protect it," she said.
"We will protect it." Kale drew her into a warm embrace, his wings folding gently around them.
"And we will," he murmured. "No force, no curse, no shadow can break what we have forged." Days passed, and the palace above and below slowly returned to calm. The court watched them with new eyes, no longer scornful, but curious, respectful, and even wary. The story of the scorned bride and the mysterious king had spread throughout Eldrith, and while whispers remained, they carried a new tone: admiration. Elara learned to walk through both worlds with grace. She moved among mortals with humility and kindness, and among vampires with courage and wisdom. Her powers grew, not just in strength, but in control, tempered by love and compassion. One evening, Kale led her to the highest tower of the palace. The full moon shone bright, casting silver over the lands, and the wind carried the scent of blossoms from the gardens below. "Look," he said softly, his hand brushing hers. "This world, this kingdom, it is ours to protect." Elara gazed at the horizon, the mountains bathed in moonlight, the rivers shimmering like liquid silver.
"I never imagined life could be like this," she whispered.
"I never imagined being a queen would feel like this." Kale pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead. "Not just a queen," he said. "You are my partner, my equal, my heart. The scorn of the world above is nothing compared to the truth we have found. Together, we are stronger than any curse, any shadow, any enemy."
Elara smiled, letting herself feel the fullness of the moment: love, triumph, courage, and hope all intertwined.
She had walked through fear and doubt, through shadows and whispers, and she had emerged stronger. And Kale had been there every step, patient, steadfast, yet vulnerable in ways only she could see. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands. "I love you," she said, her voice steady and full of warmth. "And I love you," he replied, his lips brushing hers in a kiss that carried centuries of longing and relief. "You have given me life I never thought I could have. You have given me hope." The moonlight shimmered over them, and for a moment, time itself seemed to pause. The shadows of the past, the whispers of the hidden court, the weight of the curse, all of it felt distant, powerless in the face of their unity. But even as they embraced, the wind shifted. The palace walls seemed to breathe with the echoes of history, and Elara knew that vigilance would always be required. The world was changing, and so were they. Their bond was a beacon, a new force in the kingdom, and with it came responsibility. Kale broke the embrace slightly, looking down at her with eyes both fierce and tender. "Elara, no matter what comes, remember this. We are the heart of this kingdom. And as long as we stand together, nothing can undo what we have built." Elara nodded, feeling the depth of the truth in his words. "Then we will face the future," she said, as one. As the night deepened, the first stars appeared, twinkling like distant lanterns in the sky. The wind carried the scent of blooming flowers, the soft rustle of leaves, and the quiet hum of magic lingering in the air. The kingdom seemed alive, aware that its rulers were not ordinary, but bound by courage, love, and a bond that even time could not sever. Kale and Elara stood on the tower, hand in hand, the moonlight bathing them in silver. Below, the palace and the hidden courts rested, calm for the first time in centuries. The curse had been challenged, the shadows had been faced, and the bond between mortal and immortal had been strengthened beyond measure. And somewhere in the quiet, distant hills, whispers of old legends began to change. No longer did they speak only of fear and power. Now they carried the story of a scorned bride and the vampire king, who, together, had forged a union stronger than darkness itself. Elara rested her head against Kale's shoulder. "This is only the beginning, isn't it?" she asked softly. Kale's lips curved in a rare, gentle smile. "Yes," he said, "but we will face it together, and whatever comes, we will remain unbroken." The wind stirred, the moonlight shimmered, and the kingdom waited, full of promise. In that moment, between heartbeats and shadows, Elara knew the truth of what she had learned. Love, courage, and unity were the greatest magic of all. Together they turned from the tower to face their kingdom, no longer as a simple bride and a mysterious man, but as rulers, as partners, as legends in the making. And the night, finally, seemed at peace.